This is a simple and effective way to learn four languages in 2025. If you do all these exercises consistently and you're disciplined, you will be fluent in all of these languages. Not at the end of the year. No, you'll be fluent in all four of them, March or April already, as long as you work on all of them and you do everything I say here, right? So pay attention. So this is a list of 15,000 sentences in English, Spanish, French, Portuguese, and Italian at the end of it. Yeah, those are four English plus four Romance languages: Spanish, French, Portuguese, and Italian, all very similar to each other. Some more than others. Portuguese, Spanish, and Italian very similar. French slightly more different, especially the pronunciation. But if you do this, you learn all of them fast. So we got English here, and then Spanish, French. Yeah, 15,000 sentences, all the vocabulary that you need, all the grammar that you need for regular conversations to get a B2 level more or less, fast, understand pretty much everything, and be able to talk about pretty much everything. Everything's included here. How do you learn it? Well, first you take the audio files. There are audio files of this. Each one's around 15 hours of audio. So you hear el tren está retrasado, estos zapatos son demasiado ajustados, este teléfono es muy viejo, bla bla bla. Le train est en retard, ces chaussures sont trop serrées, ce téléphone est vraiment vieux, bla bla bla. 15 hours of each of sentences. So what you need to do first is take Spanish and make a playlist and start listening to it over and over again. Just when you go work out, when you go, uh, I don't know, public transport, commutes, driving, uh, doing stuff at home, cooking, cleaning, whatever chores you have to do. Just binge listen to this list over and over again, even if you don't understand much at first. That's exercise one that you need to do, just with Spanish for now, right? Exercise two is going to be shadowing. So you listen to the same audio files from the beginning while reading. So you'll have to read fast for this. If you are a very slow reader, I recommend you do my speed reading exercises in the course because it's going to be a game changer. If you read 100 words a minute, you like the train is delayed. The train. You can't read like that. You need to read fast because the faster you read, the more you can read in the same amount of time. So the faster you learn. Yeah. So you have to train your reading speed, and especially for this exercise because it will require you to listen and read at the same time and say it aloud at the same time. This is shadowing. You can do it without reading as well, but in the beginning, it's going to be very difficult without reading. You need to have the text in front of you to have an idea of what you're talking about. And also, if you can't read fast enough, I can read super fast. So you can listen to it and read both the English and the Spanish at the same time. I mean, I don't need to read either because I understand Spanish, but you need to read super fast so that you can read along while you're listening and read the meaning as well. So you need to be jumping back and forth, and you say it while you hearing the words. You saying them aloud, and this is going to be pretty brutal. It's going to be intense, especially in the beginning. You get better very quickly if you keep doing it consistently, but in the beginning it's going to be a workout for your mouth and your mind. All right, so you do 500, 1,000, 2,000 sentences a day of this. Listen and not listen and repeat, not listen to a sentence and then repeat after. No, you say it together alongside with it. So it's going to be fast. Sentences come fast one after another. It's usually around 1,000 sentences an hour. So depends on how much you want to do it. Um, but yeah, the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. So whatever happened there? Yeah, okay, it's back. You do that. You listen to them over and over during the day, and then you also shadow. So then, when you when the next day you're listening, continue listening to them, you've been shadowing them while reading, so it's going to be much easier to understand some stuff of what you're listening to, and then you keep doing that. Yeah, and once you've done this with the whole list in Spanish, um, you're going to start doing active recall, which means we had another exercise. You keep doing everything else. You keep listening, and then you go back to the beginning and you shadow them again, right? But you start doing active recall, which means you read the English, you try to say it in Spanish, you check, you probably made lots of mistakes, you repeat it out correctly, you try with the next sentence. These shoes are too tight. Estos zapatos son demasiado apretados o ajustados. Right. This phone's really old. Este teléfono es demasiado viejo. Oh, muy viejo, sorry. And you keep doing that. Yeah. So you translate mentally, you say it aloud, then you check. This exercise is excellent for a variety of things. Learning to think in the language, you learn to speak. You have to say a lot of things in the language. It's much better than talking to people when it comes to making you think and speak in the language, because you not using what you already know, you constantly forcing yourself to use words that you wouldn't normally use. It's taking you out of your comfort zone, right? So you do this with whatever 100, 200 sentences a day with Spanish. And once you're at this point of like, okay, you've shadowed the whole thing, you listen to it daily, like, at least 10 hours a week of listening to the same lines over and over. I know it's boring, but it's effective. Once you're at this point, you've done active recall with at least 1,000 lines. Then we move on to French. You continue listening to Spanish, right? But less. You do half of your listening in Spanish and half of it in French. And you start shadowing the French as well. Exactly what you do, exactly all the exercises you did with Spanish, you do them with French. So, le train est en retard, ses chaussures sont trop serrées, ce téléphone est vraiment vieux, il rit, est-ce que tout te sent bien, tu es toujours en retard, les enfants sont-ils prêts, je comprends, je suis puissé. You listen to it and you just speak alongside it. And you do the whole thing from start to finish. Again, around 15 hours of listening and repeating. You can do it in a week. It's pretty, again, this is all hard work, right? This is not the lazy way, this is not effortless, none of that, but it's fast, it's effective. You have the discipline and the work ethic, you can learn four languages very fast by doing this. All right. So you shadow the whole thing, the whole French thing from start to finish, and you continue doing whatever you left it in Spanish with the active recall. You continue doing that, and once you've done the whole thing in French, you start doing active recall for French as well. Once you've shadowed the whole thing, and but this time you read the Spanish, so you translate not from English into French, but from Spanish into French. And this way, you are reviewing the Spanish. Of course, if you don't understand it, then you can check the English. But um, you look at the Spanish, you try to say it in French, then you check if you said it correctly or not. And this is the solution to one of the main problems with learning multiple languages that are similar to each other. You end up it can be confusing because Portuguese, Spanish, Italian, French, they're all related and they're similar, and there are many things that are similar. So you can end up speaking Portuñol, for example, which is a lot of Spanish speakers do that. They move to Brazil and they end up speaking like a weird mix of Spanish and Portuguese, and they never really end up speaking well. If you do this exercise, translate from one language to the other, you will learn all the differences well. So you learn to distinguish between the languages and to compartmentalize them and to keep them in different I don't know if in different parts of your brain, but you learn the differences between them, and also the pronunciation. If you listen to the same sentences in all the languages, exactly the same sentences, you learn the differences in grammar and vocab, but also in pronunciation, right? So you end up not mixing them. Um, so yeah, you translate from Spanish into French, and you keep doing active recall with it. And then we move on to Portuguese, and can you guess what we'll do with this? Exactly the same. You start listening to it. So now you do a third Portuguese, a third Spanish, and a third uh, French. Or maybe you could even get rid of the Spanish at this point, or do much less of the Spanish because you probably understand pretty much everything. But you should still listen to it regularly. Maybe do 10 minutes a day or something of the audios. Probably sick and tired of them, but if you keep listening to them regularly, it's going to be good. But again, you're reviewing the Spanish by translating from Spanish into French and then getting corrected. You're still reviewing the Spanish, right? But now what you'll do is just listen and shadow the Portuguese and then translate from French into Portuguese with the active recall. And once you've done that, you will do exactly the same with Italian. So you listen to Italian or the playlist, the whole playlist over and over. You shadow it once or twice from start to finish, and you start doing active recall, Portuguese into Italian. Keep in mind that you're still listening to everything else. So you, if you've got 4 hours a day to listen to language learning materials, and trust me, you can find the time if you're a little bit creative and we waste lots of time during the day, and there's lots of time where we're not doing anything. You can't find the time unless you are working. I don't know if you're Elon Musk or something and you're working or tweeting 100 hours a week or something. Maybe then you don't have the time. For normal people, have the time to do this. So you, even if you've got 2 hours for listening, if you only have 2 hours a day for listening, you still can listen to half an hour a day to each language, which is good. If you're doing everything else, just with listening and watching videos and all that nonsense, it's going to take forever to learn a language. But if you do these exercises, especially shadowing and active recall, which are very difficult and frustrating, and uh, it's a lot of effort, but it's 10 times more effective when it comes to making you speak the language. So you translate from Portuguese into Italian, from the whole list. Yeah, o treno está atrasado. You think il treno è in ritardo. Il treno è in ritardo. Esses sapatos são muito apertados. Queste scarpe sono troppo. Well, I don't even remember. Strette. Yeah, like stretchers. Okay. Queste scarpe sono troppo strette. And you do it with the whole list. You'll make lots of mistakes. It's fine. It's so. What are the main when you're learning something? If you listen to Andrew Huberman or any of these neuroscientists, like actual scientists, not people who talk about languages and they've got PhD in languages or something. They'll say that the fastest way to learn anything, any skill, is making lots of repetition first, and this is lots of repetition, and then making lots of mistakes with immediate feedback. That's exactly it. You read it, try to say it, check mistakes. Okay, you repeat it aloud correctly this time. Next one, you read it, you try to say it, and then again, even more reps by listening to it over and over. You're not learning pronunciation by doing this, but you learn pronunciation by listening to the same lines over and over and over and shadowing them. So you listen and repeat over and over. And by sheer repetition, you learn pronunciation as well, relatively well. It'd be a good idea to get feedback from someone, native speakers or something, but that's all. Uh, that's for later. In the beginning, when you are learning a language from scratch or you're learning anything from scratch, it's better to learn as much as you can, as fast as you can first, even if you make mistakes. It's better to know 10,000 words and 15,000 sentences and to be able to say lots of stuff with some mistakes here and there than to learn very few sentences really well that you're sure that you're making mistakes, but then you can't talk about anything else. It's better to first learn loads and then you you'll eventually find out if you're making mistakes than the other way around. Yeah, if you learn super slowly, like, I learn 3 words a day. Okay, good luck. You'll need 10 years to be fluent. Like, if you do this, you learn super fast. So that's basically the plan. You listen to it over and over. First, the first language, then shadow the first language, do active recall with the first language, repeat with the second, using the first language. So you use the first language you're learning as base language while learning the second language, and then you do the same thing. Listen, shadow. You keep adding one language the moment you start getting comfortable with the current language. While listening to all of them, uh, you never really should stop listening to any of the languages. You once you're listening to once you're learning them, you should keep listening to them. Just even if it's not much, even if it's a couple hours a week, you should listen to the same lines over and over. And again, it's really important that you listen to these lines instead of some random podcast or some things like that. I'm sure it's much more interesting, but um, 10,000 lines, 20 times each. It's not that much in terms of time. It's much more effective when it comes to making you speak than random podcasts, because random podcasts, unless they're very repetitive and just they just say the same things over and over, uh, most of the lines you'll end up understanding them maybe after thousands of hours, most of what they say, but you won't be able to replicate most of the stuff they're saying. And understanding is important, but when it comes to speaking, being able to produce language is much more important, especially in the beginning. And being able to produce it fast, or think in the language fast, and being able to say it in complete sentences without hesitation, without thinking too much of or at all about grammar, like sentence structure, all that nonsense. You don't need any of that. You repeat complete sentences, thousands of them, tens of thousands of them aloud, like this, and then you repeat them aloud by shadowing, and then you translate into the language complete sentences again, thousands of them. You end up being able to say all of that without learning grammar or anything. And that's it. This is how you learn 4 languages in the next 3 months if you want. Early April, you should be able to speak all 4 of them. So if you've got any questions, any you need help or anything, let me know in the comments. Now it all depends on you. If you do the work, you'll be a polyglot. Yeah, mid 2025.